seems to be that a lot of campaigns for a lot of industries, for a lot of companies of all sizes, haven't been as effective anymore. And everyone's like, well, I'm trying my best. Like it's the same campaign, the same strategy. I've changed the content, I've changed some of the messaging, but it's just not actually performing. And what it seems to be is that the biases inherent across all marketers seems to have limited the scope of their messaging, because it's not done through research. Yeah. So what do you think about that? I know that was a really long sentence. Yeah, but I'd love to know your thoughts.
It is a great question. And, I was thinking about the answer as well and thinking back to examples because, I've worked with two-man startups to literally build a behavioral strategy from scratch, which encompassed the entire brand, even influenced what their logo looked like. But they were, had very small target audiences, all the way through to the KFCs of the world, as you said. I think, firstly, behavioral marketing doesn't give a shit about demographics, right? And the reality, it also doesn't care about psychographics, thinking. It cares about behavior, because behavior is an action. And that, we have, the science shows, we have 70,000 thoughts per day, but we maybe verbalize around 2,000 of them. And then how many do we act on? Maybe 20 of them. So what I said before about, demographics, we see these days, Tesla's a great example, right? It could be just as easily driven by a 25-year-old, crypto millionaire versus a 60-year-old female board director at Rio Tinto, for example. So, I think to that end, demographics are dead, but there's a behavior that they will have in common, right? And that's where, no matter how big or how small your audience, behavioral marketing provides a heuristic to cut through redundant measurement like demographics, as an example, and connect a common behavioral trait that it doesn't matter, again, how these people think, in the example that I just gave about Tesla, will be very, very different. But their behavior, the thing that they act on. Now, I don't know, but I would hazard a guess inside of Tesla, they've got a lot of information around, people wanting to drive impact in some way, shape, or form. They'll see a Tesla as a status driver for them in that, in that capacity. So they're able to find a through line between the 25-year-old guy and the 60-year-old woman that creates something in common from a behavioral perspective. Now, that audience might only be 10,000 people in Australia. I don't think they have an awful lot of cars. It could also be bigger than that, but I think that the size of the audience is only defined by the behavior itself. And the behavior is not discriminated. Again, I think I said right at the beginning, it looks at how people behave in reality, not how we should behave. It doesn't say, oh, well, you're a 25-year-old guy, you shouldn't be, spending 150 grand on a car. It looks at, well, you did, and you're willing to do that. So how can we provide marketing that validates you and where you're at? Does that make sense, Alex?
Yeah, I'm getting there. And, just for the listeners as well, like I've, just got all the books. I've got Thinking Fast and Slow and Nudge and all the books that Nick has recommended. And as maybe at the end, we could talk about like a few more books that people can get if they really want to get into it. It can get pretty technical, right? But what's interesting is that it's based on behaviors, right? And so if you really start thinking about what that does to messaging, right? If we're focusing on behaviors, are you really talking about your features, or are you talking about something that's a bit more deep in terms of that message, right? And I think this is where a lot of kind of marketing campaigns maybe fall short, is that they're just focusing on the stuff, not on the reason that person will take action on that stuff. And there's a hint that's in the name, yeah? It's behavioral, right? It's not stuff. Oh, I can't even come up with another word for that right now, but it's actually basically how they actually kind of operate, right? Like it's how they actually take action. Like it's what's going to cause them to take action. And yes. I think that is hard to figure out, and that is risky to figure out. And if you just try to guess it, this is where the biases come into play. This is where there's problems, right? And this is where the behavioral science approach to actually understanding first through qualitative research helps to guide it. And this is why that process is so important.